The main antagonist of part 1 of Chainsaw Man is quite literally control, the personification of humanity's collective fear of control, and as such it's quite obvious that control and obedience are very important themes in the series, with the counter to control, freedom, being obviously important as well. And so this is what we shall discuss today. So if you find yourself entertained at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell, as I cannot explain to you how much such a small action can do for this channel, and if you want to support this channel even further, then perhaps check out my Patreon. Anyway, on with the video. Obedience versus freedom is one of the most pivotal thematic through lines in part 1 of Chainsaw Man. I mean, our protagonist Denji starts the series as someone obedient to his dreams and to Makima, and our antagonist Makima represents control, her goal being to control Denji and gain the obedience of Chainsaw Man. The conflict then is Denji breaking free of her control and choosing a life for himself, one where he is free and not under anyone else's control. He is a dog because he is under the control of Makima, the controlled devil. Now, dogs are used across the series to symbolise obedience. The most obvious example is Denji himself. When he meets Makima, she tells him to either die as a devil or become her dog, and then later he asks to become her dog once he is emotionally broken by her and gives into her control fully. There's loads of dog imagery used around him, both in the manga and anime, and overall you'd have to try pretty hard to not see any dog imagery around his character. But there is more dog symbolism than just Denji, my favourite being that the first devil we see being used by public safety, the first devil that is subservient and obedient to humans, is the fox devil. As well, a fox is a canine like a dog, to the point a lot of early scanlations of the series directly translated the fox devil as the dog devil. Devils inherently hate humans and want to see them suffering and in pain. So the fox devil, being one that instead helps humans and kills its own kind, shows how much it has fallen from its identity as a devil. Now just a tool for public safety. It's also got the most contracts that we have seen for any devil in the series, again linking it back to being just an obedient dog. The fact it's also first seen being used by Aki may also represent how he is also an obedient slave, both to his dream and to Makima. And my absolute favourite part of symbolism around the Fox Devil, which may not be intentional, but if so it's just masterclass writing, is that the Fox Devil only lets handsome people summon its head. And well, why does Denji fall under Makima's control and become obedient to her? Because he is attracted to her, because he likes her looks. Just like the Fox Devil is a slave to public safety, so is he to Makima. He is just a dog to her. As well, dogs are man's best friend, but they are quite clearly below us. We don't stand equally with dogs, they just happen to be the animals we can best train and control, the ones that are most obedient to us. And well, on the other hand, what pet isn't so obedient? The cat. Cats are independent animals, curious and free-spirited. They represent the opposite of obedience, they represent freedom. After all, the country mouse, the safe sheltered one, has no fear of cats, but the city mouse, the one that experiences freedom and new experiences, is the one that fears the cat. And well, which character is represented in the story by a cat? Well, that is Power. Power is free, she is wild, she doesn't obey laws. I mean, the very first thing we see her do is break the law. She steals a private devil hunter's kill, which is illegal. She openly objects to control of the government, of the laws they lay down. Something quite important, as like I will explain later in the video. Control overall is almost a metaphor for the evils of the government and the necessary evil they inflict. Power is the opposite of Denji then. He is a dog and she is a cat. That's why her only friend till meeting Denji was Miaoi, her cat, and why the two didn't get on at first, because one was a dog, one was a cat. Power then as a cat represents freedom, hence why her death is the final nail in the coffin for Denji becoming a full-on dog, because her death represents the last of his freedom being squashed. The fact she persists inside his blood then is a metaphor for how even when completely broken, freedom existed in him, as freedom is inherent to humans unlike control, which is forced on us by more powerful forces. It is natural for humans to seek freedom against oppression. Power's blood gave him the power to rebel, the power to go against Makima and her control, to not be obedient anymore, but to be free. Whereas Makima and her control showed no emotion, Power and her freedom was representative of connection and love, the things Denji gains across the story that give him the power to fight back against Makima. Makima ends up defeated when Power's blood is put in her body, because freedom is what overcomes control. As Denji learns to be loved and cared for over the series, we see Miaoi cuddle up to him and befriend him. This is symbolic of him seeking freedom outside of Makima's control, further shown when he doesn't go on holiday with Makima and instead stays to look after Power. He is beginning to become not a dog, but a cat. hence why when we first see Denji in part 2 is when he saves a cat, because cats are representative of freedom, and freedom is what Denji gains at the end of part 1 when he defeats Makima, a metaphor for the control that has always been over him his entire life. So yeah, dog's bad, cat's good. And well, if we do end up seeing a dog or cat devil in this series, then I really am curious to see just how they will affect the story and what they will symbolise, as trust me, either of these two devils, if they are introduced in the story, will be majorly important. But okay, dogs represent obedience and cats freedom, but how does that impact the story itself? Well, as we all know, Makima is the control devil, a quite on the nose hint that she represents the idea of control and as such, obedience. She is an entity that forces obedience on not just Denji, but the world. She wants to control the world and mould it in her image. She controls most of our main characters, and her end goal is to control Chainsaw Man and become a god of this world, shaping it how she desires. A world that is obedient to her will. And so to break free of her control of being obedient, Denji has to defeat Makima and the control she represents to become free and free the world from her control. Throughout the story we get little hints that none of our main cast are really in control of their own lives. For example, all the people Denji interacts with happen to work for public safety, people under Makima's supervision and, as we later learn, her control. The only real exception is Reze, someone who at first just wants to use him but then genuinely grows to love him. She was his one way out, but like everything in Denji's life, Makima is in control. She speared Reze through the heart before she could meet with Denji, and was then put under the same control as anyone else. As the only people allowed near Denji are those Makima allows. Even before meeting Makima, he was a dog for the Yakuza, and before that to his abusive father. The one time he tried to break free of control and make a decision for his own, by killing his father, he was punished for it and shouldered with a crushing debt. He repressed this memory and any further thoughts of freedom because in his mind he associated them with pain and punishment. He was used by the Yakuza again like a dog, and once again when he chose to break free of their control and make a decision for himself, he was soon leashed again, this time by Makima. He was told to die as a devil or live as a dog. Once again he was punished for his actions of freedom and chained back up, and every time it's by adults, by people with more power than him. Remember, even now Denji is still just a kid, but he was controlled and abused by adults above him with power, which may be a metaphor for the power nations have over their citizens, which is showcased in the series. And well, there is also countless little metaphors for Denji's lack of control across the series, like how the Eternity Devil trapped him, forcing him to remain unable to escape. He was not free to do as he pleased, he was confined in his control, his own agency was taken away. Katana Man told him to die for his sins to make up for killing his grandfather. He did not give Denji a choice, instead forcing a decision that he must die upon him. Denji doesn't deserve the pain he gets dealt, but it is dictated to him that he should be hurt nonetheless by others because he has no control. But it isn't just Denji. Kobane, for example, wants to be free of her family, free of their control. Himeno wanted to be free of danger, to live peacefully with Aki, and Aki, although tragically too late, wants to be free of that same danger too. However, everyone is unable to be free because of the inherent control we as humans must face, this being personified in the story by Makima. However, we as humans, through making choices for ourselves and not in service to the force that controls us from above, we can reach towards a sense of freedom away from control. But as shown by Denji and how he is being controlled by a bigger and bigger power, control cannot be so easily escaped from. Control just is synonymous with the story. The first antagonist of the series was the zombie devil, a devil that controls people, and the final is the literal control devil. People want to be controlled. The Yakuza happily let themselves become the zombie devil's minions in exchange for power, like how the Prime Minister of Japan was willing to sacrifice his own people to Makima for the sake of his nation. If you can live happy, if you can gain power, if you can ensure the success of your nation, then being controlled is worth it, right? Well, judging by how Makima was defeated and killed because she didn't understand the thing she was controlling, I think there is an answer that Chainsaw Man presents. The strong control the weak, the knowledgeable control the ignorant, but control without understanding is fragile. As already said, Denji ultimately overcame Makima's control with the help of power and the love she showed him, because connection, a two-way connection, trumps one-way control. Makima only cared about Chainsaw Man as a concept, as the hero of hell, not as a person, not as Denji, hence she didn't notice him attack her. This is because she may have controlled him, but she didn't understand him. She didn't have a real bond with him, so although she could control him, it was through nothing but power and fear. And as shown throughout the series, the strongest of forces is connection and love. Control is wrong as it goes against these ideals, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe that is the role of Naruto in the future of the story. The point is that Makima and the control she represents is wrong, and so it is overcome. Overcome by Denji, a boy who was controlled his whole life, doing something not for the sake of others, not due to someone else telling him to, but due to his own volition. Freedom overcomes control because freedom is ever growing, it is limitless by nature. There are no walls, no limits to freedom, whereas control is about imposing limits and walls. So as long as you believe it and fight for it, you can become free. Free to act as Chainsaw Man, not in order to create a new world like Makima wanted, not to be the hero of hell, but to be a superhero who wants their secret identity revealed in order to get laid. Chainsaw Man is a mantle one with expectations, but Denji doesn't allow himself to be controlled by these expectations. He uses it for his own ends, for his own goals, but he is free to do so. Chainsaw Man is a hero who never gives up, who rises from death with his engines revving, and Denji is the same, except he keeps fighting for his own worldly desires, for toast with jam, for boobs, and for getting laid, because he is free to do so. Makima thought she could control him, but she was wrong. The world collectively feared the gun devil. It was in a way under the devil's control, in constant fear of a boogeyman who could return at any time. But Denji, the man who killed the gun, brought freedom to the world. They no longer fear the gun, they were free from the control the gun held over them, which is quite significant since the gun is a metaphor for nuclear weapons, of governments keeping the world at peace with fear. Denji then in this light opposes the control through fear the government employs to keep the world at peace, and through Naruto may change how control overall is viewed across the world. Because remember, control will always exist, as even if Makima was defeated, that doesn't make the world free. Sure, Japan is now free of their influence, but that's it, as devils never truly die. Unless they are consumed by Chainsaw Man, they will forever exist. And even in that case, as the War Devil says, it may be possible to pull the names of eaten devils back out from Chainsaw Man's stomach. Control and obedience will always exist. The Prime Minister of Japan sacrificed the lives of his citizens, as did the President of America with his people's lifespan. The world will always be one controlled by higher powers that cannot be escaped from. But we can still live free despite that. We can live as freely as is possible. It's unclear if this theme of control will continue on into the rest of Chainsaw Man, though considering Naruto's existence, I'd argue yes. And so in that case, we may reach a different conclusion in the future. A possible answer to this ideological conflict beyond just being free within your own means. Or maybe we may not get a concrete answer. It's never said in the series which mouse is better off, the controlled country mouse or the free city mouse. It's just a matter of personal preference, but the key point is that you should be able to choose. I don't think there's anything wrong with people wanting to live obedient lives in ignorance, but people deserve to choose. However, ignorance and knowledge, a big part of this discussion, we'll have to wait for next video, so stay tuned as the next Chainsaw Man video on this channel will be an exploration of ignorance versus knowledge. Comment of the week comes from In Due Time, and thank you. It means a lot that people think the channel should be bigger than it is, but hey, it's as big as it is. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting this channel, then consider pledging to my Patreon, where for as little as £2.75 a month, you can get your name at the end of the video, like Hikari Desu, 7SO, Ringjack9696, Dewey, and General Tonyos. So with all that said and done, I've been Seth the Sin, the Deadly Sin of Geek, and I'm signing out. Stay safe, everyone.